Yes.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Blue Sunday here on the In the Blue Corner channel. I've got the wonderful Chris Beach back there in the Bat Cave, back at Gotham City, in the library. How are you, Beachy?
Good, Vince. Yourself?
Not too bad, thanks. It's just the two of us at the moment, but we're hoping to be joined tonight by as many of our regulars and our viewers as possible, where we invite you to come on and give us your sporting highlight of the year and maybe give us your thoughts on the Carlton Football Club, what sort of year we had and what we hopefully can look forward to in the season 2022 coming up. But there's lots of sport to report on in the meantime as well. So when we have our patches where no one's coming on, we'll probably cover as many sports as possible, certainly the more popular summer sports that we generally cover, such as golf and soccer, and we might even touch on tennis a little bit coming up, and of course we've got all sorts of horse racing and harness racing as well involved. But certainly the sport to talk about first and foremost at the moment is the cricket. And you being a cricket buff, Beachy, I thought might as well get you straight on and give us your thoughts on what's happening over there at the Adelaide Oval. It certainly is another whitewash looking like coming up between Australia and England.
That's correct, Vince. I've actually got it on in the background, just on the TV screen next to me as we speak. Nathan Lyon's on to bowl at the moment. But for context, I'll give you guys a quick rundown. We have set them 460 odd for the win. The English, they are back in again, and they are one down for 24 after 9 overs as we speak. Burns and Milan are at the crease at the moment, and we think we will be getting ready to be celebrating more wickets later this evening when it's the lights on.
Yeah, well, why don't we just quickly summarise where the match is at? Of course, the Australians have made both of their innings have been declared on 9 down, although the first innings was significantly more than the second. 9 down for 473, I think it was, for the first innings, wasn't it?
Correct.
And then the English went all out for what, 230 odd?
236.
236. Which left a pretty significant shortfall there for them. Now, rather than make England follow on, the Australians have gone in and accumulated another 200-odd runs. How many did they make in their second innings before declaring?
So 9 down again before declaration. 230 was the
Okay,
score.
so 9 for 230 declared in the second innings, leaving the English a very challenging 460-odd runs to chase down. And seeing it's never been done before, I think the highest fourth innings total to win a match in the history of cricket is 418-odd runs. And I think that was made against Australia by the West Indies back in about, it might have been close to 20 years ago, maybe 2003, I think it might have been. But so I don't like England's chances of hauling in 460-odd runs in the last innings, especially with the pitch probably starting to break up a bit of uneven bounce. You reckon Nathan Lyon would have a field day on that pitch tomorrow on the fifth day? The ball will probably be spinning all over the place.
No, exactly. That said, though, the pitch has been holding up okay so far. Although I think once we get the floodlights to take full effect and we're completely in the night, I think that's when we might find ourselves in a little bit of a more entertaining phase of the game.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. The Australians always find at least 2 or 3 batsmen to make big scores. We saw that happen in Brisbane. We saw Labuschagne get in the 70s in the first innings, and Warner got out for, I think, 90, 95 or thereabouts in the first innings, 94 maybe. And, of course, then Travis Head came in and made 150. So there was, close to 350 runs between those 3 batsmen alone in Brisbane. Yeah. And now they've come out and done it again. You've got, Warner making in the 90s. I think Stephen Smith made in the 90s and got out as well. So both of those guys would have been frustrated not making centuries. But Labuschagne this time made a century. It's the only century of the test, 103 in the first innings. And you'd think that some of these guys, well, I think in the second innings as well, I think Labuschagne and Travis Head both made 50s in the second innings. So, we always find a way to find someone to make a good score. Whereas the English, they're just purely reliant on two guys. I noticed not only are they reliant on Root and David Milan, they were reliant on them in the first test in Brisbane. Yet again, they were reliant on them in the first innings here in Adelaide. Both of them making, over half centuries, but disappointingly for them, not going on to make centuries. And the problem for them is that there's just nobody else to support them. They're all making scores, not even in double figures.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I mean, look, you could say they tried to rely on Ben Stokes, but let's be honest here. He hasn't helped them out since that, you could say, amazing result that they had last Ashes series at Headingley, where they pretty much snatched it from us.
Of course, again, sorry, go on, BC, sorry.
I was just going to say, then again, you can't always rely on Broad and Anderson with the ball because, first of all, they didn't play in Brisbane and, they haven't really done too much in Adelaide, but, still, you can't be relying on certain players to do the job for you. It's got to be a whole team effort, whether it's football, whether it's cricket, whether it's soccer, it doesn't matter. You need all players to step up.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a lot of talk about, why did they leave out Anderson and Broad out of the attack in the first innings in Brisbane? Sorry, in the first test in Brisbane. But they've come into this side now in Adelaide. I guess the pitch is not conducive to fast bowling, really. It's a pretty dead flat pitch, but Anderson at night has proven in the past that he's a really good exponent of swing bowling. And yet this time he wasn't able to get too many wickets, and neither was Stuart Broad. So they've really had to do it tough. The Australians made 470 odd in the first innings. It's hardly a small total, and those English bowlers were really struggling for the most part. Even in this second innings that Australia's just declared about half an hour ago, the main bowlers were Root and Milan. They're the two batsmen that have kept them alive, and they're also now relying on them to bowl and get wickets. So. I don't know what's going on with the rest of the England team, but they're leaving too much to too few.
Well, that's interesting you say that because I think what was happening there, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but they were docked Test World Championship points for slow over rate. Now, that's a different kettle of fish altogether because they were docked for that in Brisbane as well. But I think that was to try and make sure that they were still on target with the over rate, so that way they didn't get punished again, which is why we saw Root and Milan get more of the overs there, because otherwise if it was more the regular bowlers, then they're behind again, and I don't think they want any more trouble there. So that was just why they did that.
Well, the Aussies have already taken one wicket in the final innings. The opening batsman, the Pakistani boy, what's his name again?
Hamid,
that's the one.
Hamid.
He went out for a duck. So I think they've got to make a change at the top of the innings again. I don't think those opening batsmen have ever put on a partnership yet in 4 innings. So something's got to change up at the top of the order, you would think. It's too much to expect Root and Milan to come in at 2 down for almost nothing nearly every time they come out to bat. So, look, I can't see how England can hold on. I think they'll go out tomorrow. The Australians will probably bowl them out before the day's out, probably even before the tea interval. But if needed, they could probably use all of that and still get them all out. I can't see how the Australians won't achieve a win tomorrow. They've still got another couple of hours to go tonight. So we might find England, 4 or 5 down heading into tomorrow.
Yeah, and then we've got 3 sessions tomorrow as well, just to try and make sure that we can do the job.
Yeah.
So that'll be fine. There, before we move on to
it looks like the Aussies are looking pretty good to retain the Ashes at this stage after first test we won in Brisbane, and looking like we're in the box seat to win the second test as well in Adelaide. So heading up to Melbourne, of course, for the Boxing Day test. Are you going to that?
I'm going to be going on day 3, Vince. So
Right.
crowd, I reckon, will have died down by that point, and it's usually the middle of the test match. You can usually get a result. You can sort of figure out the result here until that point, but we'll wait to see. In the meantime, someone had a call from work and said that he's got to get a COVID test tomorrow. So that's going to be a bit of fun for me.
Oh, dear.
But we will leave that to one side for the time being because that is not related to this show.
Well, fingers crossed that doesn't affect your prospects of going to the cricket, Beachy. Now, as you can see, I'm all dressed up. We've got my Santa hat on, and we're getting into the Christmas spirit. This is our final show of the year. We're taking a couple of weeks off at least to go and refresh and spend time with our families and friends. And we won't have a show next Sunday, which would be Boxing Day, and the following Sunday, which is, I think, the 2nd of January. So we'll give it a rest for a couple of weeks, but we'll certainly preview what's coming up in the new year. Now, I'm not sure if you've got anyone in the waiting room, but if you haven't, maybe we can put the link up. I've certainly sent it around to a few people that I know.
All right. Well, I'll just.
Not sure if you've got anyone waiting, but what we want to get from everyone is your sporting highlight of 2021, and talk about that for a little bit, and also give us your thoughts on Carlton, because of course this show is predominantly all about the Carlton Football Club in the AFL. So. I guess there's no highlights to talk about, but maybe you can give us your thoughts on how the year panned out, and also what your thoughts are heading into 2022 with the big changes made about, it's now 4 months ago since we saw a new president brought in, and then shortly after a new CEO and a new senior coach. So, obviously things have changed at the club. While we're waiting for others to come in, how about we get your thoughts, Beachy? What are you? What was your sporting highlight of 2021, if there was one? Unless you want to give us one or two or three.
Well, look, I could
go for your life. There's no rules here.
No, of course. I'll give you a personal one for me, at least, anyway, before I move on to the professional side of things. The last cricket season before this one started, someone became a premiership player for his career club, so I was very happy to receive that.
Fantastic.
But that was the season that had just finished, so I was very happy to have that with my teammates and one of my best mates, who was the captain of the side that I was playing in.
Okay.
We'll leave that to one side for the moment. As for the professional side of things, look. Usually any win against Essendon or Collingwood for the Carlton Football Club is a great win, because they are two of our biggest rivals to date. The win for me against Essendon usually has a bit more added to it, because I've had some experiences with Essendon supporters at games, and that has usually been not very nice to deal with, especially as a 10-year-old kid at the time.
Yeah.
But other than that, that's okay. Other than that, look, I think there's been a few that we could probably raffle off here, but I think we'll restrict it to that too. I mean, it's usually good to see a Melbourne Cup every now and again, seeing who wins it, whether it's an Australian horse or Australian trained horse or international. There's plenty you could raffle off here, Vince, but there's been plenty that's been happening, Vince, so I think that's where I'll leave it. What about you, mate?
Well, from a sporting point of view, I think there's a few highlights. In fairness, and looking at things in a neutral way without our Carlton bias, I really believe that the highlight from an AFL point of view is the fact that the Melbourne Football Club, after 57 years, finally won a premiership, and really well deserved. I mean, let's be honest, they played such an attractive and mouth-watering brand of football all year long, I thought, and thoroughly deserved to win the premiership. I'm wrapped for them. I think it's a great story. I think it was great that they won for Melbourne stalwarts like Ron Barassi and of course the ailing Neil Danaher, who was in fact honoured during the week at the Melbourne Football Club's Best and Fairest, which was won by Clayton Oliver, by the way.
Yep.
I think that's a fantastic thing for Neil Danaher. And I guess those who remember, Melbourne champions of the past like Robbie Flower and Jimmy Steins and people like that, and there'll be others as well that I've probably forgotten about. But even Sean White, another Irishman, people forget about the fact Jimmy Steins gets all of the publicity because he was such a figure at the club. But even there was another Irishman I remember played for Melbourne back in the 80s and early 90s called Sean White, fabulous fullback. He passed away too with, I think, some form of cancer. So, for people that remember those guys, they certainly won the premiership for a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. Happened to speak to Brian Dixon, for example, on the day before the grand final. Former Melbourne champion, played in the 60s and the 50s, in fact, with Ron Barassi, and a fantastic Melbourne player back then. And brought a tear to his eye to see Melbourne Football Club finally win a premiership after 57 years. But anyway, that's enough about Melbourne. That's a deserved win. Of course, in the women's football, it was won by Brisbane, the Brisbane Lions, who went to Adelaide on enemy territory and happened to play a better game of football that day against the Crows and took out the women's premiership. That was very well deserved as well, I thought. Yep. So from an AFL point of view, in a general sense, I think they were the highlights. From a Carlton point of view, there wasn't much to talk about in terms of highlights. We didn't beat. I think we beat one team that ended up. When you look at the positions on the ladder at the end of the year, we beat one team that was above us on the ladder. In fact, we beat them twice, but it was only the one team, Fremantle. Yeah. Fremantle finished 11th. We finished 13th. And all of our victories occurred against teams that were below us on the ladder, except for them. And there wasn't too much to write home about, was there, from a victory point of view? Like you, I beg your pardon. The Essendon was the other one. We did beat Essendon, as you mentioned. So really, the Essendon win was, I think, the highlight. And also the win against Collingwood, the return game, when during that week we lost a Carlton legend in Serge Silvani, and of course his grandson Jack played that day, and you couldn't help but feel that he was riding on the wings of an angel that day. He took a spectacular mark on the wing, and I think he even kicked a goal too from memory. So it would have been a fitting way for him to honour his grandfather, and also with a win against the old enemy Collingwood. So, that was a pretty special day in my memory for season 2021. Not too many others. There was a lot of upheaval in the end. Of course, the coach getting sacked, as well as a lot of his assistants. Eventually, the CEO got sacked as well. We saw a change of presidency in late August. And then a week later, that's when all the sackings happened. So, hopefully we're going into a new season with a broom that's gone through the place a little bit, and a nice fresh start for 2022, we hope. We hope that all of these new appointments bring success. There's no guarantees, though, is there?
Of course not. Of course not. I mean, we all want
it's all a case of remains to be seen, doesn't it?
Exactly right. And, I want to be typing it up like most of us, but unfortunately Mr. Realistic here is keeping it on the down low in case he goes too early and is bitten again, because that's happened too many times to me over the last few years. Just while I think of it, Lana Owens has made an appearance in the chat this evening. Good evening to you.
G'day, Lana.
And
why don't you come on and talk to us?
yes, I've put the
By the
link
way,
in.
Beachy, on another point of view, you asked me about sporting highlights of 2021. One of the other ones I thought was a real highlight, and I certainly enjoyed it myself personally at the time, was the win by Italy in the Euro 2020 tournament back in July. I thought that was fantastic. Over England in a penalty shootout after a 1-1 draw after extra time. Couldn't separate the teams. It's a real pity, really, to have to separate them by having a penalty shootout. But nevertheless, there's no other feasible way to do it. So that's the way it is. Penalty shootout it is. And Italy somehow managed to win it. And I guess brought back memories of 15 years earlier when they won the 2006 World Cup over in Germany, also by penalties. So they've never been a team that's really enjoyed penalty shootouts. They've tended to lose most of them, but the last couple of big ones that have really meant something, they've managed to come up trumps. So the Euro 2020 tournament in July, that was certainly a very memorable one for me. What else was a memorable sporting moment? I suppose the Australian cricket team winning the T20 World Cup over there in the United Arab Emirates, over at Abu Dhabi and Dubai. That was pretty memorable. That was their very first T20 World Cup championship. And also from a tennis point of view, I thought Ash Barty winning Wimbledon was a fantastic victory as well, and a very memorable win from an Australian point of view over Carolina Pliskova. And we certainly celebrated Ash winning that, and of course, number one player in the world. There were lots of fantastic victories in the golfing arena. A lot of Aussies won golf tournaments this year, such as Matt Jones. He won the Honda Classic in Florida. Cam Davis won the Rocket Mortgage Classic in Michigan. Lucas Herbert, we spoke about him a few weeks back. He won the Bermuda Championship in Bermuda. So that's just some of the victories around the world that Aussies have pulled off, which have made it a memorable year in sport. And I guess from a horse racing point of view, I personally love the win of Very Elegant in the Melbourne Cup with those Melbourne colours, red and blue. It was a bit of an omen, really, wasn't it? But it was a great victory by Very Elegant in the Melbourne Cup, and finally great to see a local horse winning the big race.
And Zaki later in the Spring Racing Carnival as well. I think on the last Saturday at the Melbourne Cup Carnival in the same colours too. Would you believe it? That's
correct. Exactly right.
It was amazing.
It was amazing. So yes, so we've got lots to talk about now. We're hoping to have Steve Khatib join us very shortly. He wasn't able to come and join us immediately at the start of the show tonight, but he did promise me he'd probably be able to join us around about 8:40, 8:45. So we look forward to having Steve join us in about 15 or 20 minutes. I'm also hopeful of having Luke Humphreys join us to talk about last night's big Cranbourne Pacing Cup and Trotting Cup, which he called. I don't know if anyone else out there happened to catch it, but it was a fabulous call by Luke of the Cranbourne Pacing Cup, and a really exciting finish in the end. And certainly a memorable race. I'll get him to hopefully talk about that when he comes on a little bit after 9 o'clock. Any of you out there watching that want to come on and give us your sporting highlight of the year? Maybe share with us your thoughts about Carlton and where we're at as a football club. That'd be good. There's the StreamYard link. If you want to take that down quickly, I'd leave that up there for a little bit, Chris, if you can. People might be able to take it down. Come and join us. We'll certainly let you on. We'll let everyone on tonight that wants to give us their thoughts on the year in sport. All righty. While we're waiting for that, there's some more results to talk about, I suppose, in the last few days. We've seen some soccer results come through. And by the way, there's been a lot of games cancelled in the last day or two over there in Europe, especially in England with the English Premier League, a lot of matches getting cancelled. What's caused all that, Beachy?
So it's my understanding that the COVID pandemic, unfortunately, Vince, has reared its ugly head back in the UK, and a whole group of games for the week ahead in the English Premier League has been affected. One of which is our one, Vince, against Leicester City at home at Goodison Park.
That's right, yes.
To happen later down the line. But I'll also just quickly run on which other games have been affected while I think of it. Just going to get the fixture up.
Gee, just having a look at the ladder there of the English Premier League, Beachy, you got a lot of inconsistency there with how many games have been played by various teams. You got Arsenal having played 18 games, and yet Tottenham's only played 14. So, gee, there's some catching up to do there for some of these teams.
Yeah, and then you've got, and you've got Man
Most
United
of them have played 16 or 17.
Yeah, you've got Man United on 16, which we've just touched on now. But that's probably Tottenham's got a lot of games to catch up on. So
even Burnley's only played 15. So, yeah, I mean, there's a few games there that have obviously been cancelled that they'll need to catch up on.
Yep. But the games that have been postponed for this week in the English Premier League, I'll just quickly touch on them. As I've mentioned already, Everton versus Leicester City, that's been postponed. Aston Villa v Burnley, Manchester United versus Brighton, Southampton versus Brentford, Watford versus Crystal Palace, West Ham versus the Norwich City, and then I think that's about it by the look of it, because Arsenal and Leeds United got underway with the result. That was a 4-1 win to Arsenal. Newcastle.
They're back in the top four, which is good for them, isn't it? I mean, they're 4 points ahead of West Ham, having played one more game, but that doesn't really matter. I mean, they're not going to get overtaken in fourth position. They're 4 points ahead.
No, exactly. I mean, unless something crazy happens within the next few games when they're rescheduled, I don't know what's going to happen there, but we'll see what happens. Newcastle versus Manchester City, that's still planned to go ahead. Wolverhampton Wanderers against Chelsea FC, that's still planned to go ahead. And Tottenham versus Liverpool, that's still scheduled to go ahead as well. That at this stage is taking place on the 20th of December. So
Beachy, seeing you and I are staunch Everton supporters, I'll tell you one game that I was very happy to draw during the week was against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge at the Chelsea home ground, and we had like a reserves team in there. It was a bunch of kids, and they did really well. They managed to draw the game 1-1.
Yeah, exactly. I used to work with a Chelsea supporter at the office that I was at, and I still talk to him because he's a good guy and he's a Chelsea fan. And I was saying to him before the game, you'll excuse me for not being confident, because usually when we've gone to usually when we've gone to Stamford Bridge, or whether they've come to us, I haven't exactly been 100% confident with them, because we've usually had trouble with them. But nonetheless, it was a nice surprise to draw with Chelsea at Stamford Bridge.
And of course, Joe, our good friend Joe Lutzer, who's over in Bangkok, Thailand, who may very well join us on the show. I'm hopeful that he does, although he seems to be having some sound issues over there. He's a staunch Chelsea supporter, so we should really get stuck into him over that 1-1 draw. They would have expected to win that game about 5-0. But our young players, it just goes to show you, when you give a bunch of young kids an opportunity to show what they've got, it's amazing they can really surprise you at times.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of those times. Now, I'm disappointed for him that our game has been postponed this week, actually, Vince, because this would have been a great chance to show these young kids to the fans at home. Now, whether some of them are coming off the bench, I don't know. but that doesn't matter to me because it would have been a great chance for everybody to see these young kids play ahead and
Yeah.
see how they would have gone against. Well, Leicester City, I don't think would be top tier competition at the moment, but
Yeah.
there's still a decent side to play against. So it'd be interesting to see how they handled it.
Yep, my word. Well, let's just quickly have a look at the. I mean, we're heading into Christmas, and there's still some games that are scheduled to be played in these competitions, whether it's the English Premier League or the Italian Serie A or the Spanish La Liga or the French League One or the German Bundesliga. There's plenty of football still to be played, even in our own Australian A-League, which produced a fantastic match last night between Melbourne Victory and Melbourne City, a 2-2 draw in the end. It was a fantastic game.
Yes.
But let's just go through the ladder, I guess, regardless of how many games they've played. Let's just go through the ladders of all of these various competitions. So we'll start off with the English Premier League, and last year's champions, of course, Manchester City, are 1 point in front of Liverpool, 41 points to 40. 3 points further behind is Chelsea on 37. All three teams have played 17 games. Arsenal is now into the top four, so they're the top four Champions League positions. They've played one more game, of course, having played 18, but they're on 32 points. Now, West Ham has slipped out of the top four. They're on 28. Manchester United on 27, Tottenham 25, Wolves 24, and rounding out the top 10 are Leicester on 22 and Aston Villa also on 22. Our team, Everton, is languishing in 14th position on only 19 points. We do need about 2 or 3 good, solid wins just to keep the Wolves away from the door at the moment. Yeah. But let's hope that they can turn it around a little bit in the new year. Any surprises there, Beachy? Any comments you'd like to make about the English Premier League ladder?
No, I think this is pretty much expected at this point. Chelsea and Liverpool are usually up there anyway. It's just a matter of where they finish usually.
Yeah.
Manchester City, there's no surprise there either. I mean, they've been good for a number of years. Manchester United in 6th. Now, 21 years ago, maybe even just after that, I don't think you would have predicted Manchester United to have such a fall from grace as they have now, because they had Sir Alex Ferguson as their manager for a number of years. Of course, he's now decided to retire, but still a powerhouse club like them, you would have thought they would have tried to remain consistent. However, with people coming and going all the time, it doesn't always work out. What else is there?
Well, do you think the move to bring back Cristiano Ronaldo to Manchester United has been a worthwhile and successful one, or is it a bit too early to tell, or do you think it's just a Band-Aid measure?
Part of me thinks it's too early to tell, but another part of me is also thinking it's a Band-Aid measure as well, but I'm going to wait and see what happens with them.
Pretty expensive Band-Aid.
Yeah, and it'll be one expensive one to remove as well, because once it's removed, I don't see the bleeding stopping. So we'll wait and see with that. This is a bit of a shock for me to see us see as far down as we are, because we usually round up the top 10 usually, but and again, we always try and aim for 6th or 7th. So, looking at our next few games, taking out the postponed game that we have next, we've got, what is it? So round 19, we've got Burnley away. Now, I've looked at the ladder for that, and they're in the relegation zone in 18th. For those that don't know, it is the bottom 3 that go down, and the top 3 of the division below that come up.
They get promoted, yeah.
The Burnley is languishing in 18th. Now, we're away for that at Turf Moor. So you'd think we need to get some 3 points out of that. But then again, we just don't know what's going to be happening after that. Then we actually see
They can
another...
also be danger games, can't they? I mean, you're playing a team with its backs against the wall. Sometimes the survival instincts kick in, and a lowly team like Burnley, 18th position in the 3 relegation spots, can produce a big win at home against a team that most people would consider in the top half of the table. But Everton at the moment are not in the top half of the table, and there's a reason for that. And a lot of it's to do with injuries. A lot of our best players are just not on the park. Whether it's Dominic Calvert-Lewin, the striker, or Richarlison, who is basically his partner in crime up forward, and there's a number of others too that have been struck down with injury.
Exactly. And then on New Year's Eve, we actually see another cellar dweller, but we're at home to that one. Newcastle United.
Yeah, well,
that will be.
There's another team that you never know what they might produce.
Exactly, and with their new owners,
they'll pour money into that one. That's for sure.
Exactly.
They're not short of a buck. The owners of Newcastle United. That's for sure.
Damn right. And just and then to round 21, because I'll give us the next 3. So it's Burnley, Burnley away, Newcastle at home, and Brighton Hove Albion at home. So that's the first.
Got to get at least two, if not all 3 wins out of those 3.
Yeah, exactly. And that's happening.
At least you'd want to at least win your home game and one of the 2 away games.
Well, actually, we're away to Burnley, and then I think we're at home.
The other 2 are home. Well, then you'd want to win both your home games and probably pull off that away game against Burnley. So bugger it. Let's win all 3 of them.
Exactly right. Let's win all 3 of them.
That's from an Everton point of view. Let's finish off on the Premier League and go to the Spanish La Liga, which would probably be considered one of the other Premier Leagues in Europe. And here we have a little bit of a surprise, especially in 3rd and 4th positions. You've got Real Madrid on top. That's probably expected, 42 points.
Yes.
You've got Sevilla, who just had a fantastic 2-1 victory over Atletico Madrid last night, up to 37 points in a very solid 2nd position. And then you've got two teams that haven't really occupied the top 4 positions since I can remember. Real Betis on 33 and Rayo Vallecano on 30. And Atletico Madrid are now out of the top 4. That was last year's winner, by the way, Atletico Madrid. They won the Spanish La Liga for the 2020-2021 season. They're now down in 5th. Real Sociedad also equal with them on 29 points in 6th. And then Barcelona, of all teams, have dropped down to 7th on the ladder on 27 points. There's a lot of surprises there, Beachy.
Oh, where do you start? I mean, look, Barcelona, how many years in a row were they occupying either 1st or 2nd with the likes of Messi, Neymar, Suarez, and players like Ronaldinho, Carlos Puyol? Mate, I could give you a whole list of players, and they have. If there was a fall from grace like Manchester United, I think FC Barcelona have surpassed it in spades. They have surpassed it in a very big way.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the biggest clubs in Spain, and it is, look, I can't say it enough.
There's a long way to go. 17 games, essentially, 17 or 18 games most of those clubs have played. So that's the halfway mark is when you've played 19 games, because eventually everyone plays 38. So it's close to halfway mark. You'd have to say it looks like being a battle between Real Madrid and Sevilla for the championship there in the La Liga.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to the Italian Serie A. And last year's winners of the championship, Inter Milan, they are on top again, 43 points. Their rivals in the same city, AC Milan, second on 39. Atalanta, which is really enjoying a period of fantastic success in the last couple of years. They finished in the top 4 last year. They're also in the top 4 again at the moment, 37 points in third position. Napoli in fourth on 36, comfortably in the top 4. And then there's a 5-point gap to Roma, Juventus. Roma and Juventus on 31 points and Fiorentina on 30. So, again, you'd have to say it looks like being a battle of the two teams out of Milan, being Inter Milan and AC Milan.
Yes, exactly. And, these clubs in Milan...
Might just put some light on.
That's right, yeah.
Sorry, say again?
So these clubs in Milan, they are probably two of the biggest, if not the biggest in the country as it is. Because they usually share what the stadium that's now on its way out, I'm afraid, the San Siro, which is probably one of the biggest stadiums in the city at the time of this
San Siro,
Napoli, look, I think this is probably about expected for them. At some point, someone's going to have to challenge for the Milans. Then again, you look at AS Roma as well. They've had players like Totti come through. All other players as well. Then you probably got Italy's oldest team in the country at the moment, Juventus, which is pretty much one of the biggest follow clubs worldwide usually. And they probably want to be pushing further up rather than be sitting in sixth at the moment.
Yeah, well, the one good thing for Juventus followers is that they are still in the Champions League. They've made it through to the round of 16, so they're still in with a chance, I guess. And they'd be expecting in the second half of the year for their team to probably rise up the ladder into the top 4. Now, they may not eventually win. They are 12 points behind Inter Milan, which is significant. That's 4 victories. But you would expect that by the end of the year or by the end of the season, Juventus would make it up into the top 4 at some point in time. I'm very encouraged by how Fiorentina's playing. I think they're playing very spirited football, very similar to how Sevilla is playing in the Spanish League. So keep an eye on them. They've got a game in hand as well on both Roma and Juventus. So if they win their next match, they could leap up to 5th position and go up to 33 points. So I'll be watching that game with interest, certainly in the next 24 hours. They've got that game coming up shortly. All right, let's go to the where do we go from here? The French League. Well, runaway winners here, you'd think. Paris Saint-Germain, PSG, better known as their abbreviated name is what most people call them, PSG. 45 points, 13 in front of their nearest rivals, Marseille on 32. Rennes is on 31. And they're the 3 positions that get automatic Champions League qualification. Nice is just outside that top 3 on 30 points. Montpellier on 28. Lens on 27. And Strasbourg and Monaco, my favourite team, on 26 in 8th position. So looks like PSG is going to be a runaway winner there with all of those fabulous players like Mbappe and Neymar and Di Maria and players like that.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's probably about expected for...
And very well managed too by Maurizio Pochettino, who used to be the manager of Tottenham a couple of years back. Well, until a couple of years ago. Yep. All right, so the French League is also very interesting, and we'll finish up with the the German Bundesliga for the European competitions anyway. And again, another runaway winner, hardly a surprise. It tends to be this way most years. Bayern Munich on 43 points. Borussia Dortmund on 34 is in second. Bayer Leverkusen in third on 28, as well as Hoffenheim on 28, and they round off the top four. Just outside the top four is Frankfurt on 27. FC Union Berlin is on 27. Freiburg on 26th in 7th position. So it looks like being a runaway victory there for Bayern Munich, unless something goes dramatically wrong in the second half of the year.
Yes, exactly. And it's not usually a surprise to see Bayern Munich up there fighting with Borussia Dortmund. They are two of the powerhouses of the German soccer league or football league, depending on your terminology over there in Deutschland.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's interesting. We've also got Champions League that we should talk about a little bit here, because after the latest results that happened in the Champions League, we've got the draw that's come out. Now that won't these matches won't happen until February, but there's some interesting matchups. Sporting Lisbon will be up against Manchester City, and of course they play each other again in the other. Like they play in Sporting Lisbon's home ground first, and then the return match will be at Manchester City at their home ground. So whoever wins on aggregate goes through. So they combine the goals in both games. And if it's exactly the same amount of goals, it goes to the away goals rule. So the team that scores the most away goals ends up going through, don't they, Beachy?
Yes, usually.
And in the absence of any result there, so for example, if the aggregate is 4-4 and they both got 2 goals each away, well, then it goes to a penalty shootout, basically.
Yep.
I think extra time first and then penalty shootout.
Yeah, extra time.
Sporting Lisbon is up against Manchester City. Paris Saint-Germain up against Real Madrid. Now, that'll be a really worthwhile battle to watch. You've also got Red Bull Salzburg up against Bayern Munich. You would think Bayern Munich would get through there. Inter Milan up against Liverpool. That's a really interesting matchup too, isn't it? When you think about Inter being on top of the ladder in the Italian Serie A, and Liverpool currently only at 1 point behind Manchester City at the top of the English Premier League. Inter Milan against Liverpool is a mouth-watering contest. Chelsea, they're going up against last year's League One winners, Lille. So that'll be another good battle for them. Villarreal go up against Juventus. Benfica up against Ajax. And the other mouth-watering contest is Atletico Madrid up against Manchester United. And I'm looking forward to seeing who comes out in front there. Oh, we've got someone. Oh, didn't even know.
Yeah,
we've got our first guest on the show, Goz Margetta. How are you, mate? Can you hear us, Goz?
No. He did.
Is he back on?
Hang on, we got him. Goz?
Can you hear us, Goz? Hello?
Oh, this is bad.
Goz?
Yeah. He's got tech issues like Joe.
He's got technical issues. Oh, well. Hopefully he can find the right spot where he can hear us. I could hear him. Could you hear him?
Yeah, I could hear him, but he's got the same thing as what Joe's been getting.
Right. Okay.
So,
well, maybe better get him off until he gets his issues sorted out.
Yes, he'll remain
There's
in the
a false
background
alarm.
for a bit. Yeah, we'll get him in the background for a bit while
There's someone. Technical issues. Can't see or hear you. He's telling me. He just sent me a message.
Yeah.
All right. So there you go for the Champions League. But those matches won't happen until February. We've got a whole round of FA Cup matches to come at the start of January, Beachy. There's some really interesting contests shaping up in the FA Cup. And let's talk about the A-League, shall we? We've got a couple of the Melbourne teams right up there at the top. You've got Melbourne Victory and Western United and I think they're right up there together with MacArthur at the top of the A-League ladder.
Yes, exactly. Just before we do that, though, the English have just lost another wicket after using the decision review system challenge on that last wicket. So that is Milan just going for England. They have 2 for 48. LBW to Nisa, gone for 20 off 52. Okay.
Oh, dear. Well, that's one of their reliable batsmen too.
Yep, so A-League. I'll quickly run through the rounds.
The poor old Poms, they can't take a trick.
No, exactly.
I'm starting to feel sorry for them.
Almost. Now, okay, so I'll quickly run through the round. Western United, they were at home to Adelaide United, and they had a win 1-0 there. Central Coast were hosting the Western Sydney Wanderers in Gosford. That was a win to them.
2-0. What was the win there?
2-0.
2-0
to West against
They're
the
playing
Western
well,
Sydney
Central.
Wanderers.
Yeah.
Yep,
they're playing well.
Brisbane and Perth has been postponed due to COVID, I believe.
That's a shame.
We'll worry about that later. But that's Brisbane hosting Perth. Then, as you touched on previously, last night, Melbourne City and Melbourne Victory had a 2-2 draw at Amy Park. We were in front for most of the first half, and then they got 2 goals in a matter of minutes in the second half, to which then we got one back with about 10 or so minutes to go, and that is how it finished.
Right.
MacArthur FC were at home in Campbelltown Stadium to Newcastle Jets. That was a win 2-1. And Sydney FC, who were usually and I'm afraid to say this because I hate Sydney FC, is who the front runners of the comp usually, but not this time anyway. That was a 2-1 win over Wellington Phoenix at the Nestrata Jubilee Stadium in Cogra, which is a suburb of Sydney.
Have the Wellington Phoenix actually been here for like weeks and months in a row? Or have they? I don't think they've played any matches in New Zealand yet, have they?
Not this season. I'll just double check to be sure.
Must be pretty tough on the boys in that team, not to be able to go home.
Yeah, they had one home game at Wynn Stadium in Wollongong. They've then played. They've had back-to-back home games in Wollongong, and they started the season in Newcastle. So yeah, they haven't played a game in New Zealand since last season, where they had a few sides travel to them back to back to back.
That's pretty tough.
Right, that's pretty tough on them.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess it is what it is. Moving on to next week, just quickly, because we won't be doing this show for after Christmas. Victory will be playing Western United on Boxing Day. That I will go to, provided everything goes well with my COVID test. I'll leave that alone for a moment.
Yeah.
It is a Sydney derby of sorts. MacArthur versus Sydney. Newcastle versus Western Sydney. That's in Newcastle. Adelaide and Perth are postponed. I think it must be because of the COVID or border situation. God only knows. We won't go into there though. That's politics. Central Coast play at home to Wellington, and Brisbane play host to Melbourne City at Moreton Daily Stadium, which is in Redcliffe.
Yep. All righty. Very comprehensive as usual, Beachy. So, as far as the ladder goes, do you want to give us a quick rundown of the top 4 on the A-League ladder?
Yep. I'll just quickly bring the ladder up while that...
Yep.
Here we go. Fixtures ladder. Here we go. Okay, so it is number 1, MacArthur FC in first, Western United are 1 point behind in second. Melbourne Victory sit on 10 points, 2 points behind Western United, who they face this coming week at Amy Park. So that's a mouth-watering tie, you could say. And there is a 1 point gap between fourth and fifth. Central Coast on 9 points, sorry. Melbourne City on 8th, and rounding up the top 6 is the Newcastle Jets, who sit on 5 points, equal with Western Sydney and Sydney FC. So this is going to be one interesting season for sure, Vince.
How many matches have been played roughly by most of the teams?
So Brisbane and Perth have played 4 at the moment.
So it's very early. It's still very, very early, isn't it?
Yep. Everyone else has played 5.
What do they all play in the end? Do they all play 27 or something like that? I think they all play 9 teams 3 times. Because there's 10, is it more than 10 teams?
Days. We've got 23 match days.
23. Right.
Yep.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how the A-League ladder starts to take shape after a few more matches, but certainly it looks promising for at least a couple of the Melbourne teams, being Melbourne Victory and, of course, Western United up there in the top 3 at the moment. Melbourne City, I wouldn't be too concerned if you're a Melbourne City supporter. They've got a lot of quality in their team, and they proved it last night against Melbourne Victory with a 2-2 draw.
Exactly.
So all the Melbourne teams are showing a lot of promise.
Yes.
All righty.
Exactly.
I think that's probably done us for the soccer side of things. Well, give me a prediction. Who do you think is going to win the English Premier League?
Great question. Who do I think is going to win it?
Well, at the moment, you got Manchester City on top, 41 points. Liverpool on 40, Chelsea 37, and Arsenal's just jumped into the top 4 at the moment temporarily. Maybe it's only temporary. Maybe they'll stay there. Who knows?
Yeah, look, I've got no idea, to be honest. I mean, look, depending on how other results go and the games that are postponed that get rescheduled, look, it's probably too early for me to call at this point. I'll probably say Man City, but that's going to probably annoy me a bit more because... yeah.
Well, Man City won it last year. Liverpool won it the year before. And, maybe it's Chelsea's turn again.
Maybe it is, but, that's going to depend on other results to see.
Well, they are the Blues, so maybe we should be barracking for Chelsea to win, seeing Everton's not looking likely at this point in time anyway.
No, exactly.
All right, let's move off the world of soccer and move into the world of tennis. Now,
hey, all, can you hear me?
There. We have got Goz. Can you hear us, Goz?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you, but I can't see or hear Vince. But I've got some major technical issues going on in this area today. It's killing me, but I could see you, Beachy, and hear you.
Okay,
cool. Away you go. Tell us your sporting
highlight. My apologies,
Maybe
all.
You can talk to Goz Beachy and tell him to give us his sporting highlight of this of 2021.
Sure. Thanks, Vince. Guys, why don't you just come out and tell us what your sporting highlight is, mate?
Say again, Beachy. Sorry about that.
Your sporting highlight. What is it, Vince? What is it, Goz?
Well, I put it down to a top 6, fellas, so I couldn't really bring it down to just the one aspect. It's mainly going to be related to Carlton, as it is. Starting at number 6, I've got Liam Jones' sudden retirement due to the vax.
Swap hats.
I'm not angry at the club, but this new system mandate that the AFL has abided by seems to be extremely unfair. It's become quite irrelevant, sports people's stance on the issue, but it is what it is. But I applaud Liam Jones for the work he's attributed to the club over the years, and for the player that he was when he walked in and the player that he's finished up as. The number fifth for me, and gents, I apologise if it's not directly related. All these top six is not related to on-field achievements. This is mainly off-field for me. Doing it for the Doc campaign for Peter Mack, a stunning financial response. The target was $5,000 that they were looking at collecting. They made just over $200,000 for this cause. It's staggering. It's not all the players. All the players. Every single Carlton player has shaved their head in support of Sam Docherty, which is absolutely staggering. Staggering amount of support. It just goes to show that there is love and loyalty in the world of sport. On the next one, number 4, I believe, is Josh Bruce's resurgence, booting 10 goals on Good Friday against North Melbourne. I was fortunate to be at that game, and even though he sadly ended up with an ACL injury during the season, which marked him off the season, 10 goals in one game from a player that has played reasonably well, has never gone to the heights of a Lance Franklin or a Chris Judd, but 10 goals, you got to see it to believe it. Number 3 for me is Sam Walsh winning the BNF. Take a look at his numbers. In 2020, for the fantasy points, he was 1,315. This year, he moved it way up to 2,397. His handball was 16 to 3 elite, and marks was 5 to 8 elite. He equalled the most votes on Brownlow night than any other Blue. He equalled it with Chris Judd and Diesel Williams on 30. Can you imagine that young kid at his age doing what he's done so far? It is absolutely unbelievable.
Yep.
And number 2, our fellow colleague, and I'm sorry, Vince, even though I can't see or hear you, I'm going to give your ego a boost at the moment, my friend. Our fellow colleague, former Carltonian president and life member, Vince Locasano, torpedoed threw a torpedo at the club for the mess and the repetitive errors over the years this year. Now, the challenge that Vince threw, along with the associates involved as well, wasn't about, and I get very boiled up about this, it wasn't about Vince becoming president or getting glory or anyone else. It was about the passion that this bloke and a lot of other people has for the club, and they wanted what's best for the club. So I'm really proud to say that, even though it wasn't elevated to the next step, that there was a spill of the board, I can guarantee you it's just my opinion. I guarantee you that these words by Vince and his associates and these actions that they took was of a positive nature, and how I hear you, but it's all good. I'll keep talking. When you want to get me off, just feel free to throw me off. Now, number one for me, and I'm pretty sure the highlight of the AFL season was the Collingwood derailment on and off the field. Jordan De Goey dramas, no finals. Maguire betrayed, no finals again. And a disastrous aftermath of the most ridiculous trade-outs of players such as Treloar, Stevenson and Phillips. How any club can push players of that quality out the door and yet still be happily volunteering to pay, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, 50 to 60% of their salary at another club. So initially, Collingwood Football Club paid a particular portion, if not half, of the salary for Treloar to play finals at another club. That I am struggling to understand that, in all honesty. And did I mention that there's no finals for them either? I'm sure I did. But all's not lost for Collingwood. They are planning to bring out a new bra range with plenty of support, soft and no cup. But that said, yeah, I'm sorry, I had to squeeze that one in, Beachy. I staggered to see what Vince's reaction would be, though. But that said, that is that said, that is my number one highlight of the year, to know that Collingwood's derailment, they had opportunities for several years now to match our 16 trophy, but obviously they fell short quite a lot of times. So it does my heart always good when I see Collingwood struggle, and even though we're not up there, we've got a better opportunity now, and I cannot wait for season 2022. I think I'm going to tread carefully with a bit of scepticism because of our recent history the last several years. But if we can't do something effectively on the field next year, whether we finish in the 8 or the top 4, then we're never going to be in the situation like we were back in the old days ever again. So that's my take.
All right, that's fine. Is that his say? Unfortunately, he can't hear me. I don't know if he can hear you or Steve there.
It's just a shame I can't hear Vince. I could just imagine what that young man is saying.
Well, it's all good.
It's not my, I don't know what to say to that. There was a whole host of things there that Goz came out with, but probably best just left as your take on the year, Goz. So thanks.
But I do have to make mention. I do have to make mention that I think with this whole COVID situation, and I apologise, Vince, if I'm talking over you. Like I said, I can't hear you or see you. I think that, the clubs that have come through reasonably well, and I do hope next year we get to have crowds back again and have some sort of normality, whether it's 80% full the stadiums or 50%, it doesn't matter. But I think the only club really that's been prepared for the COVID and really dealt with it the best out of any AFL club is Essendon, because they had their jabs done a few years ago, so they were all prepared. But
oh dear.
Sorry, I just had to squeeze that one in.
Okay, yeah, thanks, God. Thanks,
okay, I think we'll leave it there, Beachy. Say thank you to Goz and wish him happy Christmas, and we'll move on.
I'm going to finish on that note, gentlemen. You have yourselves a great Christmas, and thanks for allowing me to be part of the show this year. And let's look at bigger and brighter things for next year. Go the Blues.
Thank you, guys. Catch you in the new year, mate. Okay.
And I think we've got Steve. Have we got Steve? Can you hear us, Steve?
Loud and clear, Vince.
Oh, beautiful. Ho, mate. I've just changed hat. You like that one?
It's very becoming.
Or do you hang on? Or do you prefer my elf's hat? I think that one looks too much like I don't know.
Don't go there. Just
hang on. I started with this one.
Yeah.
How about that one?
Just grow the beard a bit more, mate, and it'll match.
No, I think I'm gonna go with the cricket one, mate. This is the one that you'd be wearing if you were out at the MCG.
That's World Series 1977 VFL Park, the pink West Indies with the pink kit.
That's it.
Remember that?
I've got my
Terry
Christmas
Packer
colours
days.
on. I thought I'd wear the green T-shirt.
That's your South Africa colour.
Hat. What's that?
Is that a Zimbabwe or South Africa sort of colours? One day,
it's probably more like Zimbabwe, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, my hero, Robert Mugabe.
Let's keep it out. Let's keep it on.
You've got to be kidding me, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway,
the Fowlers were good players for Zimbabwe, though. Chris would know them very well.
Yes,
the Fowlers.
Oh,
the Flowers.
Yes.
Flowers, sorry. Yeah.
Flower boys, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, they were almost as good as Robbie Flower for Melbourne.
Absolutely.
Great to have you join us, Steve. You've finally come in, and
sorry, apologies. There's a lot of commitments at this time of the year, Vince. Juggling commitments, but always make time for you and Chris and the listeners.
Mate. I appreciate that.
Steve, we appreciate that, mate.
We've been swimming along here, and maybe even drowning. But we've covered a lot of sports already. But
I'm not a lifeguard, mate, but I'll do my best.
We'll get stuck straight into your sporting highlights of 2021. Although Beachy wants to say something. What's that, Beachy?
Sorry, guys. Just before we go on, Cameron Green's just picked up Burns. So they are 3 for 57, the Pommies. Although
Burns is out. The other opening batsman's out, and David Milan is out. So yet again, I imagine Joe Root's at the crease, and it's all up to the captain again.
Yep, but they're just reviewing the Burns decision at the moment.
Oh, so it was challenged, was it?
Yep. So we're just.
Was it an LBW? Was it?
No, we're caught behind.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Review for a caught behind. Snicker, will tell us anything?
Anyway, while we're waiting for that news, Steve, why don't you tell us if you can sort of think back on your highlights of 2021 from a sporting point of view? Doesn't matter what sport we're talking about. What were your highlights of 2021? Or do you want to start with AFL and Carlton specifically?
Look, probably from a highlights point of view, and I say this, I say we're trying to look at this neutrally. Vince, is that essentially the lens we wanted to take here?
I actually mentioned.
Vince, you've lost your sound, mate. Still can't hear you. No. Yep.
So So I'll pick up on Vince's question there, Chris.
Yep.
Look, probably from a neutral perspective, I would certainly say that you can't go past a team such as Melbourne breaking a premiership drought. It's probably been stated many times, but that would be probably the biggest. I would believe the biggest sporting achievement from a highlights perspective of 2021 for mine.
Yep.
That would be my one for sure.
No, Vince went with that one as well, and I'm in agreement, Steve. I mean, look, 57 years is a long time to wait for a Premiership Cup to pretty much return to them. I know plenty of Melbourne supporters as it is, and they have been long suffering for most of their lives, actually. An uncle of mine who I talk to semi-regularly, he was at the grand final in 64 and had to wait all that time for that premiership to return, and he couldn't go because of COVID. So it's all unfortunate, but he was able to celebrate it at least.
Absolutely. So when a team has a drought such as that, and a lot of the players obviously would have had the pressure and the expectation around that. Melbourne hadn't played in the grand final since 2000, I think it was.
Just the
prior.
apple juice.
So there was a lot of pressure on them, and look, definitely it's hard to go past that highlight.
Yep.
Yeah, agree. I'm in agreement.
Can you hear me now, Beachy?
Yep.
Yep, I've got you.
Beautiful. Sorry about that, guys.
No, that's right. Steve was just touching on what you touched on earlier about the Melbourne grand final win, where they were pretty much just dominant for most of the season and deserved winners of the Premiership Cup that came eventually their way.
Yeah, I think that was the feel-good story of 2021, really. I mean, I don't think anyone begrudged that flag. It's a long time to wait in between drinks. And I don't know when St Kilda's going to win their next one, but whenever that might be, I don't think anyone would begrudge them too after 55 years at the moment and still counting. So, yeah. But Melbourne, I think, have certainly developed the blueprint, if you like, for success, and that is that you've got to have a culture right throughout the club from the top down, where everyone buys into the plan, if you like, and that everyone's out there to help everyone else. There's no one individual that's more important than anyone else. They regard everyone at that club as important as the next person, whether they're the boot stutter or the trainer or the coach or the player or some staff member. Everyone's in it together, and I think that was what came out of it for me. You've got to have that. We're all in this, literally together to make it work. And you've got to put egos aside and really play for each other, with each other. And they stuck by their coaches. They brought in a couple of wise old heads like, Mark Williams and Alan Richardson. And I think that was just what topped them off in terms of having the right culture at that club. You'd like to think that we're going to do something in that area ourselves at Carlton, whether we actually achieve that or not with the introduction of Michael Voss. And I certainly think it can only help with someone like Brian Cook being the CEO. But hopefully it filters right through to the last person employed at the place.
It's something that I've been wanting for a long time, Vince, because between the three of us, two of us have seen the most success, while one has seen sweet FA.
And we're not talking about the FA Cup either, are we?
Nope.
Okay. So, Steve, Carlton, give us your thoughts on the Blues. How would you sum up the year? What if any, was there a game or two that were highlights for you? And how would you sum up the year at Carlton? And what do you think we can look forward to? Give us, give you the floor here. Talk as long as you like. What are your thoughts?
So the year was probably to my expectation, but obviously not to many people's expectation, albeit understandably that the expectation was set that we would make the 8. But that's every year now, isn't it? Every December and February and
January. Got to sell those memberships, Steve. Got to sell those memberships.
Anyway.
Well, you got to sell as many as you can before you give them away for nothing to boost your membership up to 80,000.
That's correct. So essentially, around about 10th, 11th, 12th, I didn't think we were going to improve much on the previous year. Look, I think there was so it'd be hard to say there were a lot of highlights, to be completely frank. But within the games that we played, I felt that the first 3 quarters against the Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium, Docklands, I think it was the Mother's Day game, was probably the best football I've seen Carlton play. From a team perspective, from a pressure, from a defensive perspective. We didn't win the game, and people are going to be watching this and think, what's this guy talking about? We lost the game to the Bulldogs, but honestly, from a style of play, from a process point of view, that was probably our best game for the year. From albeit I know it wasn't 4 quarters, but it was 3 really good quarters of football. So for mine, that was probably Carlton's. That was a highlight to me. Now, I kind of don't think there's any point in looking at any of that anymore, because you've got a whole new coach, a whole new set of assistant coaches, and probably obviously what comes with that, which is a new game plan as well. That was probably my highlight. But I mean, what does that really mean? It means nothing. It's not like we're not building on something. We're starting again. We've got all these new coaches, and you're kind of looking at what you have and building on that, but albeit with a whole new game plan and process. So that was my highlight. For next year, it'll be all about obviously how those new players adapt to us, what new game plan is implemented, how we deal with that. And we've mentioned this on previous programs, how we deal with Harry Mackay in that structure, and essentially our reliance on him to play well and to kick goals for us to win games.
Yeah.
He did win the Coleman medal in a team that was very mediocre.
Yeah. That's a good point. We didn't even mention that, did we, Beachy, that Harry Mackay won the Coleman medal? That is worth mentioning as a highlight for Carlton supporters.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, and this is the point, right? I mean, imagine we didn't have Harry Mackay.
Yeah.
Where would we be? I mean,
or if
really,
you happen to go down with a serious injury mid-year, we would have been completely gone.
So I would say, and every team's got their star player, so you could say that about a lot of players in a team, but a goal-kicking full forward, essentially a proven goal-kicking full forward that wins the Coleman medal, I mean, he's worth a lot to a team. Arguably, there's probably 3 or 4 wins that we could have had, that we wouldn't have had if he had not performed, at his peak. So that's certainly, that would his Coleman medal would be, and I mentioned that from a team perspective that the first 3 quarters that we played against the Bulldogs would have matched it with a lot of top teams in that game, in that Mother's Day fixture. Harry Mackay winning the Coleman was probably, from a club perspective, the highlight. I think his development and evolution, albeit I know everyone still sort of sometimes turns away when he kicks for goals at times. But
he's an interesting kick for goal, isn't he?
Well, it's hot and cold. I think it's a classic case of the player that can probably kick from outside 50 when they kick through the ball and don't try and steer it through, versus a player that from 25 metres you probably wouldn't want to have your house on them kicking for goal for you, right? I think it's one of those sort of players, and that's why they kick around the corner a lot and do the Stevie J trick. But that I suppose is probably our best achievement as a club. Now we've got to use Harry as an asset in our game plan next year and beyond. We've got to have him, and we've got to have a lot more players kicking goals, and then we also need to be harder to score against the other way, as in from a defensive perspective. When we lose the ball, we need to be able to set up and not be scored against, and not just scored against. I know we use the term momentum and it's thrown around a lot, but if you're harder to score against, it'll be harder to kick 6 or 7 or 8 goals unanswered in a row, let alone 19 as occurred in that second last game of the year. So so that's essentially what we need to do. That's going to take some time. From a club culture perspective, you would hope things would improve. There are some wise football heads that are joining us, and also administratively. I go a bit deeper than most, though. Maybe I look at the board and think, well, not much has changed, albeit we've got new members of the board. We've still got the Pratt and Matheson families there controlling things, and if they don't get their way, essentially the board will scapegoat people. I don't think that'll change. I think that culture will still be at Carlton until those families are there. I don't think that's going to change at all. Unfortunately, I'd like to hope that culture of scapegoating and not buying in and taking responsibility leaves. What's
going to make it leave?
It's not. No, it's not. It's not going to leave.
Because that's what's been going on at Carlton for decades.
It's not going to leave. We just got to hope. We've got to be so good that we don't need to scapegoat and blame. We've got to. Brian Cook has so much pressure on him now. I mean, he didn't want the job. He wanted to retire, but he got thrown a checkbook at him that essentially meant that he'd be an idiot not to take the job. He put a 3-year term on.
Cap on it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things here on Brian Cook. He is the absolute saviour. He is Mr. Fix-It. He's going to come in and suddenly, started in the middle of October, and suddenly in a few months, going to turn it all around. Well, that's not going to happen. What he needs to do is slowly but surely work through the place. Fix the cultural issues from a HR perspective, from a staff perspective.
Administrative perspective.
Yep. Ensure that whoever's, break that daisy chain, for want of a better term, of people covering each other up and looking after each other and all the politics that goes on in organisations, and really work out who can do their job, who is doing their job properly, or who's just managing up very well and getting away with it. Go through all of that, pull the place completely apart, but gradually. It's not a bomb or a broom or anything that needs to go through the place, and then start implementing, change, and then attract the right people. Now that's a challenge as well. It's not just changing, but you need to get the right people there and making Carlton a destination. I don't want to use the term employer of choice, because I know there was a cornflakes packet award that was given to Carlton for winning an employer of choice. Really meaning, making Carlton a place where people want to go to work, because they believe not only will they be well compensated, but they will also be, they'll also feel that they are supported, they will grow, there's good career development and opportunities. And if they stick their neck out to do something or try something new, it won't be chopped off if it doesn't necessarily work straight away, or they won't be made an example of. That's, I think, what Cook needs to do. That is a 12, 18-month job minimum for mine, looking at the place from an organisation point of view. Now, what does that relate to the...
The other thing we should mention is that he's meant to be grooming someone else along the way to take over from him in 3 years from now. So he's already stating that he's only here for a finite period of time, whether we make finals or win flags or not. He's out of here in 3 years because he'll be 70. He's just turned 67 about a month ago. And he's putting a 3-year time limit on it, saying, well, I was going to retire, but you convinced me not to, thanks to your checkbook. And nevertheless, win, lose or draw, finals or no finals, flags or no flags, I'm out of here, and I'll groom someone else to take over from me. So that's another thing he's got to do.
And that person you groom needs to be selected within the next 12 to 18 months at the most. So almost they need to be now recruiting for the next Brian Cook as we speak.
Right. Yep.
That person needs to be the right person. That person needs to be a person, as I said earlier, that wants to come to Carlton, that feels like it is the right career decision for them to come to Carlton at the moment. Not just because they just need a gap between jobs on their CV. This has got to be a destination. This has got to be a place where people want to come. So he's got to convince them of that, but they'll only be convinced of that once they see whatever he's doing from an organisational perspective and those improvements that are being made. So that's one thing.
How many CEOs have you seen groom someone else? I'm talking at AFL Football Club land here. How many CEOs have groomed a successor successfully, and can you name them?
It's a great question on the spot, Vince. Can I name them?
No one comes to mind in my eyes. I've seen plenty of good ones, but when they leave, and then it's up to the board to find another one. It's not that the CEO themselves have actually groomed a successor necessarily.
No. I mean, Carlton used to have a tradition of very, very long-standing serving CEOs.
Well, we had Ian Collins, and he sort of handed down to Stephen Goff.
Yep.
And then Stephen Goff left, and then we had a couple of one-year CEOs like
Guerra.
I'm trying to remember. I think John Guerrieri might have been there for 1 year.
Don Hanley.
Don Hanley from St Kilda.
Yep. Yep. Everyone, when they mention Don Hanley's name, always mentions St Kilda next to it. But anyway, that was John Elliott had said that, I think, in the past about Don Hanley.
Right.
But anyway.
I only remember he's from St Kilda.
Anyway, I think that's a big part of Brian Cook's remit now, is getting that next CEO. So I know we're talking about next year, but it's not just as simple a conversation of where we're going to be in 12 months. It's got to be what's going to be happening for the future years. So Cook has to do that. And then the other really tough job I think Brian Cook's got, he's then got to push back on the board, where he goes to a board meeting and the board is saying, hey, Brian, get me a result. We want an outcome. and Brian's got to say, well, I'm doing these things and this is my process, this is the work I'm doing. And the board said, but why isn't it working straight away for us?
You're meant to be the Messiah.
Yeah. And then he's got to explain all of that and manage those board members, right? He's got a stakeholder management, as they call it. He's got to look at that as well. And that's not easy. He's got a lot of challenges. I definitely a highly competent individual. People I've spoken to, I know a person that worked at Geelong, like Brian Cook would talk to the boot stutter. He would, as you'd mentioned earlier, he will speak to them all. All of the things you mentioned earlier, Vince, Brian Cook brings, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But if you haven't got the board and the people there, there's no point in saying we're all in, but we're not the right people to be in. You've got to be in,
the difference
but have the right people
Brian
that are in as
Cook
well.
At Geelong and Brian Cook at Carlton is that Frank Costa instilled a culture from president down. And Brian Cook just fit into that. He was the perfect choice for Frank Costa as a CEO. In fact, I think that's when he convinced him to come across from West Coast.
Yep.
The difference here is that we don't have a Frank Costa.
Brian Cook is being the Frank Costa. It's the other way around here.
It's almost sort of flipping it around where Brian Cook is the man with the successful who will hopefully bring the successful culture to us, but from CEO level down. The question is, can you achieve that as a CEO without the support and understanding of the people at board level?
Well, that's right. And
especially if the
level,
results are not forthcoming in an immediate sense.
Absolutely. That's going to be his challenge. So he's got sort of a challenge from let's look at the current landscape of staff in whether it be football, whether it be marketing, sales, whatever. Let's look at that. Let's look at also then obviously look at board and how does he manage the board. Now, a lot of those people on the board, they could buy and sell him 100 times. Like, try having a conversation with them. If they don't like your answer, that's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not happy with your answer. They're not going to take,
because I don't think Brian Cook came on an employment contract that was just a sort of, you're on staff. He's got a watertight 3-year contract.
No. Brian Cook has a luxurious position where he knows he's going to retire in 3 years. He's got the runs on the board.
You need me more than I need you.
Absolutely. But still, but even so, Vince, you think if he goes and stands up to a board member and tells a board member what they don't want to hear, how's that conversation going to go down?
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting because we've seen 4 new board members come on, and most people think that, half the board's been changed. It's a fresh new board, but the reality is that they're just there to represent the same families. They just keep flipping them all around and keep moving the pieces on the chessboard.
What I did want to state,
the same interests are being looked after more than ever before on the Carlton board.
And what I did want to state is we're at a bit of a crossroads in our financial strategy as well. From the perspective of, obviously, a lot of clubs have spoken about this of recent, of our investment in gaming and where does that go. Our split of games at the MCG and Docklands and where that goes as well. So both of those are major topics that need to be discussed from a business and a strategy point of view. I'll touch on both of those if you don't mind.
Go if you like.
So essentially, from a reliance on gaming, there's a $3+ million profit, albeit not nowhere near that at the moment because of obviously COVID and those gaming venues not being open, where it's being gifted to us by the Matheson family. So from a beneficiary point of view, there's $3 million of profit that's essentially provided to Carlton Football Club, or $19 odd million of revenue. Now, I think Carlton turned over, and don't quote me on top of my head, on a Sunday night, $72 million or thereabouts. Okay.
Thereabouts.
Yeah, close enough. Right. Okay. So $19 million of that $70-odd million of revenue is gaming revenue.
Yep.
So we're talking about where I went to school. I think that's a bit more than 30%, isn't it? Right.
Yep.
Of gaming revenue. So
Yep.
Carlton now profit is $3 million. Yeah, there you go. Sorry. So there's $3 million that Carlton, if they exit gaming, goodbye, gone. Now, not 3 million at the moment, but 3 million during when normal business activity was occurring.
Yeah.
So what are they going to do to replace that 3 million if they want to? That's one thing.
Cook has already said we can't do it.
Yep. Okay.
Now we might want to move away, slowly move away.
What's move away? I've heard. What does move away mean?
Until these other revenue streams improve and increase, and all of a sudden you can make up that $3 million shortfall. But until you can do that, you'd be crazy to let go of the gaming revenue.
So move away means nothing. We're staying there. You're not moving away. You're either leaving or you're staying. This is corporate speak, Vince.
Of course it is.
Yeah, moving away. Oh,
but I'm talking about the interview that he had. That
yes, but I know that I heard the interview. Yeah, look, great answer. I mean, sounds good, but really means is they're staying there, right? So we're going to still have the pokey revenue. Okay, so assuming the pokey venues are full or full enough, there's $3 million coming there. Okay, then you've got a supposed 80,000 membership base. Right? Okay, so I know people always use this simplistic analogy where if every member turned up to a game, we couldn't fit them in. Well, of course, we know that doesn't happen, right? Okay, that's a bit of a silly idea. Essentially,
it's funny with all this massive growth in membership, how the attendance at Carlton games hasn't improved at all. I wonder why.
So essentially, though, we really have. Let's talk at paying members, right? Let's really pick it apart, okay? So you've got probably high 60s that people actually put their hand in their pocket and actually paid more than $100 for a membership of some sort, whether it be 3-game, whatever you want, country, whatever, right? There was probably high 60s. Good number. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not I don't buy into this whole we've got more members than you rubbish. I mean, let's not. I mean, that's a simplistic argument too. But let's say that you've got that many members. Okay, so to grow the club though, you need a ground that has a lot of general admission access, because those members will want to go to a game and won't want a fully ticketed affair, or won't want to need to be paying big money unless you have a Geelong business model which says we can have less members but they all pay more. So you got one way or another, right? Okay. Now, ideally, we want to grow our membership base, but yet we're not playing games at the MCG. We had a strategy under Mark Lajudice. Whether it was a strategy or motherhood statement, I don't know what it was, but it was said by him in 2015-16, we want to move to 7 and 4, 7 at the MCG and 4 at Docklands. We know Carlton supporters love playing at the MCG. That's our model. That's what we're moving. That's the way we can grow the club, and that's what we're working on.
The most they got to was 6 and 5, and
yes.
The very next year it went back to 5 and 6. It went back to 5 at the MCG and 6 at Etihad again.
Absolutely. The AFL
Stadium now.
City Hall, who control Carlton.
Said,
No deal.
Not
right?
only that, we were starting to play really poor football and finishing towards the bottom of the ladder, of course, under most of those years in the last 7 or 8. So, beggars can't be choosers. You get given what you get given. And
our balance sheet was poor. There were no government grants.
Yeah.
So, there's a hint there, what I just said. Anyway, so essentially, so suddenly Carlton go back to playing more games at Docklands, and the games we did play at the MCG were against sides like West Coast, or Port Adelaide, and the AFL City Hall were using their influence and interest in the Dockland Stadium to play Carlton against more Melbourne-based traditional clubs, such as Hawthorn and other clubs like that.
Yep,
so
Geelong.
Absolutely. I understand it, but it doesn't make sense to me from a club philosophy. But beggars can't be choosers. So suddenly we just said to the AFL, oh, well, this is a good deal. You're going to look after us. We are on life support from you, essentially. We'll just take that money. Don't worry about the long-term strategy of the club, where we really want to be, how we want to grow a membership base. We're just going to play these games. So now we're in the same situation. So we're a club that says we have all these members, play games there. Now, the sentiment around the Traps, I don't know about you, Vince, I don't know about you, Beachy, but everybody I speak to, and maybe I speak to different people to you, wants to play 7 and 4, wants to play more games at the MCG than at Docklands. That's what they want. That's aspirationally, that's what all members want, if you were to ask them.
Not going to happen.
Am I right with that? Oh, no, are you speaking to the same people I'm speaking to?
I think most people prefer to play at the MCG, but as long as it's against Melbourne-based teams. I don't think they want to play Fremantle Dockers at the MCG. I don't think they want to play, Gold Coast Suns at the MCG.
I think they want to play more games at the MCG. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
They want to play more games at the G than at Docklands, though, regardless.
Yes, but they'd rather play Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs and Richmond and Geelong and Hawthorn and North Melbourne and St Kilda. They'd rather play all of those Melbourne-based teams than the interstate teams. But that's just not going to happen because also the AFL's got to look after some of those. In fact, all of those interstate teams have been promised, I think, 2 games each minimum at the MCG. So at some stage, they have to play away games at the MCG for Gold Coast and for GWS and for Fremantle and for Port Adelaide, etc., etc.
But all of that being said, and I understand we're wearing our Carlton goggles now in this conversation, right? But all that being said,
it all comes down to you can't always have what you want.
No.
It's one thing to aspire to 7 and 4. I don't think it's going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. But because we're so reliant on the AFL, we should be, unfortunately, we're not prepared to say no to the money from Docklands because Docklands are giving us ridiculous. But that's not in the long-term interest of the club. That's not there. Now, if you've got 80,000 members or you've got all of what you say you have, that's not the best long-term philosophy. So at the moment, where's our strategy on that? Now, that has not been outlined to members at all. That is a key policy strategy that any board should have in place from a strategic point of view of where they see Carlton playing their games. Ultimately, as a member, winning games is important, but where you play and where your home ground is should be nearly one of the most important things you discuss. Yet constantly these issues are not addressed at all.
No.
And I don't think we have...
yes, we want to play more games at the MCG, and yes, ideally we'd love to have 7 there and 4 at Marvel Stadium, but we get given what we're given, and we've just got to keep pushing, and that seems to be the strategy. We've just got to keep asking.
Okay, so we can get 40 million from a government to build a training facility that arguably we probably don't need, right? Yet we can't influence at all, fixturing or where we want to play our home.
Not while we've been so poorly underperforming, not only from a ladder position point of view, not only from a win-loss point of view, but also the brand of football that we play. It's just not the sort of brand of football that gets viewers on a Friday night. Hence, you saw the AFL fixture come out 2 weeks ago. No Friday nights for us, not in the first 9 rounds. Now, that might change in the following 14 rounds, depending on how we go in the first 9. But not one Friday night game in the first 9 rounds.
So as a
couple of
member,
Thursday nights, but that's purely because we always have that Thursday night round one thing against Richmond, and
Yep.
they've decided to play us again on a Thursday night against the Bulldogs. That could end up being a fizzer. But I think they're taking a bit of a punt on us there.
But as a member, Vince, though, the things we've just discussed, as in, like from a long-term perspective, these are key issues.
Can I just take you a little bit off that and onto a different issue, and that is our finances. Now,
Yep.
we've seen the letters come out from the president espousing all of these financial achievements, that we're no longer an AFL-assisted club, that we're standing alone on our own 2 feet. We don't need their help. We've paid back all of our historical debt. Now, considering what are our profit figures over the last, say, 3 or 4 years, how can we possibly pay $7 million in debt off? Like, that's like wiping off all of your loans. Okay? Now, if you had a business that had $7 million worth of loans, and in the last 4 years, your profit figures don't add up to $7 million, how on earth do you get to pay back $7 million worth of debt? I'd love to know how you do that.
Vince, I think
Can
that
you
is
explain
probably
for the average member how the Carlton Football Club managed to pay off $7 million worth of debt? And we are now, as according to that letter from the president, we are now debt-free.
So Vince, I love your analogy because I've actually never heard it put that simply. I've probably thought about it maybe in a too complicated way.
That to me is how, I mean,
no, I love that analogy. You're exactly right. So Carlton is cash flow rich, but profit poor. When we say that, essentially we have a lot of cash flow because we've got a lot of money coming in, as I mentioned earlier, grants for facilities and so forth. Those grants, though, when the music stops, as they say, and all the grants are acquitted and all the money is spent, the music stops, and that's your cash position. Now, it's a little bit on the never here, because when that grant money is used, what will Carlton's position be? And it could potentially yo-yo back into debt after that time. And that's the concern. But of course, look, the feel-good story is
does
pay
anyone
the debt
go
off.
back and say, hang on, why are we back into debt when you actually paid back all of our debt back in 2021?
Of course they won't. Look, you and I both know, right?
Smoke and mirrors, Steve. They're back.
Well, I wouldn't say they're back. That's normal.
Well, they've never been off.
No, all clubs do it. But PR releases, and I understand, most supporters would see that and go, we're out of debt. And the water cooler conversation, or the conversation at the milk bar or something, would be, Carlton's flying off the field. They absolutely got it all right. It's just they can't win games. But when we win games, gee, we're going to be good. When we can just win some games, we're going to be great. I hear that all the time. And then I'll, occasionally say, well, to people, okay, well, how'd they pay the debt off? Do you know? Oh, no, flying. They're doing well. Great off the field. So, because, look, I'm not saying you all need to be accountants. We're here to watch football. But at the same time, as members, we have an obligation to show a bit of an interest in our club, not just when it goes pear-shaped, when we lose games and we want to find someone to blame or look at what's gone wrong. But just generally, I think that annual general meetings are not participated in enough. A lot of clubs have had them of recent. Most people, they're out of football season. They're out of sight, out of mind. Only hardcore people that follow it go to them. But the profit position of your club is really important, because then when you start talking about where you're going to be playing your home games, then you start talking about what training facilities you're going to have, e.g. Hawthorn, are they going to be able to move to their new base in Dingley? Are they going to be able to do all these things they want to do? Then all those things become so important, because without the real profit position, the healthy football club, you don't have all those other things which lead to winning games. So I know there's a couple of degrees of separation here, but these things are very, very, very important, and we need to follow them. So to answer your question, Vince, look.
I'm waiting. How do you pay it off?
No, you don't. No, you don't. It's
they claim that all of our historical debt has literally been paid off.
Well,
we do not have a cent of debt.
Yeah, as you speak right now.
Happen?
As you speak, but if you were to pay all the grant money back, use all the grant money for the jobs and projects, and a whole lot of other things, you may not have enough money to cover it. But that's another story. So look, definitely some wins is, I think that Kane Little definitely grew the membership. Absolutely, is it an inflated figure because of all the freebies and $9 or $1 memberships or whatever they were? For sure they are, but still I think we're in a sustainable membership position now where it's high 60s, I would say, of real members. I talk about not cats and dogs, people with a pulse that you can actually check their pulse, they're actually alive, and they pay more than $100 out of their wallet. That would be probably
how many members do you reckon pay at least $100?
I'd say it'd be mid to high 60s. I'm guesstimating here, right? That would be the real figure of members.
Well, let me tell you, the increase in membership this year on the previous year was about 14,000, and it went from 67 to 81, and that's approximately a 21% increase in a COVID year, where last year we hardly went to a game of football, and this year, as it turns out, we didn't get to see that many games of football either.
And
now, that tells me that a very large percentage of that 21,000 extra members,
21%, yes,
must have been freebies. Right. Must have been freebies.
Yeah. Now,
so that tells me that we've probably got more like 60,000 members who are bona fide, and the additional 21, they're all for nothing. How many of them will actually now pay full tote odds for their membership in 2022?
No, none. No, none. When I say none, insignificant amount. Right? Because they wouldn't have gone to a game, number one. Number two, we're not exactly, the hottest thing going around at the moment, are we, right? Not exactly marketable. I mean, they would have been a member beforehand. It's not like they, if they were really wanted to know Carlton, they would have been a member beforehand. It's not like you take a friend that's never been to the football from overseas and say, hey, this is Carlton. But a lot of people give it to their mother
or their father or their son or their daughter or their granddaughter who has no interest, but they put it in their name, and then they use that membership pass if they want to go with a friend. But if that friend doesn't actually exist, well, then are they going to pay for a second membership next year? Probably not.
Absolutely not. Look, all that marketing strategy is okay if you've actually got a product to sell.
I don't think it is okay, with all due respect. No. What I object to is this. I object to the paying member being treated like a mug, because if you're a paying member, you're the idiot that paid $100 or $200 or $500 or $1,000 or whatever it might be, and here's the club giving them away for nothing. You're the idiot that paid. Why didn't you just wait for someone to give you one? I mean, really, it's just the wrong message, and it devalues the whole notion of membership. It's the club itself saying that our memberships are unsaleable. We have to literally give them away to increase our membership. That's what they're saying. That, to me, is the message. And I think it's a pathetic message, personally, to be giving them away. Now, I know you're giving them to your members who are already paying and saying, here, thanks for your membership, have a freebie. But I just think that it sends all the wrong messages to those other people that don't pay. You're going along to the footy with a mate of yours. You paid for yours, and he's going for nothing.
Look, Vince, I just
don't think it's the right message, Steve.
Look, I see your point of view. I think that if they, I think that you members need to try and market to get other members. You need to use your membership base to sell your product for you from a referral perspective. You're right. Whether to call it a membership though is insulting. I understand that.
BT, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think it should be something that the club continues as a policy and as a strategy to increase membership by giving them away on the back of a cornflakes packet? Because that's basically what they're doing.
Vince, I think I'm going to abstain from this one because, to be quite honest, this is probably a subject that could be debated all night. And, we
won't be doing that. We only got about another 5 minutes.
I was just going to say,
I was just wondering whether you had whether you agreed with the strategy or not. That's all.
No, it's a good question to ask. My answer is I'm going to abstain from it because it's a topic that it will require probably further debate down the line.
Fair enough.
So when I think essentially, just to sum this one up, we have been going on for a while, but I would suggest that there's this obsession with member numbers and competitions between clubs of who's got the most members, and I think this is what it leads to: clubs giving memberships away to essentially try and pump up the number of members that they've got. And whether, I don't really, it's really about attendances at home games if you want to measure something.
Well, that's what I would have thought. I would have thought that revenue dollars raised from membership, whether you've got 50,000 members or 80,000 members or 100,000 members, that to me is irrelevant. It's how much money are you raising in revenue, and what's the increase in the revenue from year to year, and also the other point that you just made.
And exactly. Okay, so look, they were my major points on Carlton. Where to from here? Things that we really need to focus on for members. And I think in summary, it was home game strategy, membership as such, revenue streams from gambling, or alternate revenue streams. And although we're not AFL assisted, technically we still really are, because the AFL are telling us to play at Docklands and we're saying, how high, sir, do you want us to jump? Essentially. They're the points. I'd love us to be able to have more leverage and pick where we want to play our games that suit us and have a bit more credibility. I agree, Vince, we need to be better on field for that, but we also need to be better negotiators on that as well, and more financial. Revenue from pokies, I think, isn't necessarily the best way to go. We need to look at other revenue streams, but again, until we're more probably better on field, will we be able to do that? But that being said, we do push a community program, a lot of social responsibility programs, whether people like that or not, it's a whole nother story. I think the poker machine revenue completely flies in the face of all of that. So we are really essentially hypocrites, if you want to put it that way, but I'm being completely honest. Then from an on-field perspective, we need to look at, we've got a Coleman medalist, but we can't make the 8. We need to get more players around.
We had a Coleman medalist called Brendan Favola back about 13, 14, 15 years ago, and we weren't making the 8 then either. It's amazing how often Coleman medalists mean that you're so reliant on them for goals that you haven't got any other goal kickers that can help you get over the line.
But what we need to do is look at other players and also obviously. So there's opportunities there, right? Let's get tighter defensively. Let's defend as a team, which will mean we'll not leak. Sure, teams will kick 3 and 4 and 5 goals sometimes against you, but won't be happening every second week, and certainly won't be 19 goals, right? Let's do that. Let's get some more midfielders kicking goals, but let's also keep Harry as the Coleman medalist. Let's not change the whole game plan so that he doesn't dominate as well.
Yes.
They're what we can do, what we need to do. And then from a member's point of view, the other points that I raised were, I think, where to moving forward. And also lastly, when We need to find a way somehow to engage our members so that our members have stronger ties and relationships with other members. So we're not just customers, we're members of the club. Previously, when we used to play games at Princess Park, and I know we're going back 16, 17 years now, whenever it was when we last played there.
May 2005.
That's right, yep, against
May
Melbourne.
21st to be exact.
Yeah, I was there. We need to get all the members having more of a sense of community, so that if you sat in the Heatley stand, opposed to sitting in the Pratt stand, opposed to sitting in the Elliott stand, opposed to sitting, or whatever you want to call that, opposed to sitting in the Legend stand or the Gardner stand, you knew everybody still. Now, I'm in the Southern stand N10 or whatever, or Q25 or wherever I sit, and I just know the bay or two of people around me, and that's it. As members, there is no cross-pollination, cross-communication at all.
Yep.
So we need to get a lot more of that, and that will help us grow the club as well. And rightly, as you say, Vince, you won't need to be giving these free memberships away. You'll have more of a sense of a community. Currently, it is very corporatized, it is very clinical, it is very sterile, and we need to understand COVID's done that because we obviously haven't had many games to go to. We need to bring that back to the football. We need to have more of that. We need to have big social club functions after all our home games. We need to get people mingling, and it's not just about Carlton in business in the suits. This is about ordinary supporters as well, all from all walks of life. Anyway, I've off my soapbox, but they were my views.
You've been very comprehensive. I appreciate that.
No, exactly, Steve.
I think we've done enough on Carlton there. We've probably spoken about them for over half an hour. Your other great love, Steve, is the noble sport of golf. Can I just ask you I went through it a little bit earlier, but can I just ask you for your highlights?
I'll give you some
of the
thoughts.
Golfing world in 2021. Of course, we had some fabulous winners throughout the year. I guess we concentrate more on the majors, don't we? The US Masters, the US Open, the US PGA, and the British Open. And, of course, the US Masters was won by Hideki Matsuyama.
Yeah.
A fantastic win in the US Masters. The US PGA was Phil Mickelson at 50-odd years of age. What a fantastic win that was for Phil, or Lefty as they call him. One of my favourite players. US Open was John Rahm, and, of course, he's now the number one golfer in the world, John Rahm. And the British Open was Colin Morikawa, who's now number 2 in the world. What a year Colin's had, hey? He won all sorts of things throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, and he won the PGA the year before too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, John Rahm was the money leader in terms of prize money. But the FedEx Cup winner was Patrick Cantlay, who had 4 wins on the US PGA Tour throughout the year. He was also voted Player of the Year. And the Rookie of the Year was young Will Zalatoris, who was a runner-up to one of these guys in one of those majors as well. So really fabulous year in golf. From an Australian point of view, of course, we've ended up seeing a number of Australians win on the US tour. Matt Jones won the Honda Classic in Florida. Cameron Davis won in Michigan. Lucas Herbert, we spoke about a few weeks ago, won in Bermuda. There was also a tournament where they combined Mark Leishman and Cameron Smith winning the Zurich Classic. And,
New Orleans?
Sorry?
In New Orleans there?
Yes, in New Orleans, yes, correct. And, in fact, Cameron Smith, I think, has had a fantastic year. He hasn't actually won anything as such, but he's been so consistent that he's ended up being the highest-ranked Australian at number 20 at the moment in the world golf rankings. And, he's had a fantastic year, Cameron Smith.
Oh, amazing. And look, he can only get better, right? I think he'll improve.
Mark Leishman, 30. I think he's ranked about 35. I know Adam Scott would be about 44, 45.
You talk about rankings, but although we haven't got players in the top 10, the depth is there though, Vince. I think that, and any one of these players can pop up and win. I know that they're not necessarily winning every week or in that top 10, but we have such a great, it's amazing just the golfers we're churning out at the moment.
Considering our population here in Australia, compared to the USA, where they've got, about 12 times more people than we have. For us to have that many golfers represented in the top 100 in the world is quite an achievement.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. And look, it's hard for pro golfers at the moment. If they're in Australia, it's virtually impossible. Like, they've only just been able to travel.
So what was your highlight of 2021 in golf?
Look, I think Phil Mickelson winning was probably the biggest one.
USPGA, yep.
Yeah, 50 years of age on a tough golf course.
Fantastic.
A golf course that wouldn't necessarily suit his style of play.
Yep.
I think that was probably the biggest one.
Yep.
Closely followed by Hideki Matsuyama, the Japanese, winning the Masters. I mean, in Japan, you talk about golf
That's
obsessed.
huge in Japan.
Oh, he
would be an immediate icon in Japan.
He'll never,
straight away.
As they say, you'll never buy beer in a bar ever again yourself, right? You'll be paid for forever. That we essentially or sake or whatever you want to drink, right? That'll be him. So that's a big one. Everyone's got a different highlight. I didn't mind Lucas Herbert's win. I thought that was really good. I thought there was a lot of positives there.
By the way, last Sunday we mentioned that the two Aussies, Jason Day and Mark Leishman, had a 3-shot lead going into the final round of that tournament the Shark Shootout, they call it. Greg Norman invites them there to the course that he designed over there in Naples in Florida. Now, they didn't have the best of final rounds. They didn't have a bad round, but it's just that everyone
7 under they shot.
A far better round. They ended up finishing, I think, in 4th position, but about 4 shots behind the eventual winners. Do you want to give us a quick rundown on the results of that, or don't you have it?
I don't have the winners. I don't have all the scores in front of me. But yeah, I think they were 4 strokes behind in the end. I think 11 under was the final round. Sorry, Vince, if you've got those scores in front of you.
Try 30 under.
11 under was the final round score, I should say.
Oh, the final round score, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm just trying to find the.
They finished tied for 4th.
Now. What's that?
It was tied for 4th. I think they finished there in that one.
Yeah, Mark Leishman and Jason Day. Yeah, they didn't end up having the absolute best round. I think it was Kevin Na and Jason Kokrak who claimed the QBE shootout.
I think they shot 61 or something in the last round.
Oh, Kevin Na just couldn't miss. He was incredible, Yeah. He lost a friend of his, apparently died in the lead up to that tournament, and he just felt like he was
dedicated to him.
That he had this sort of divine intervention walking around with him all day. And Kevin Na was hitting shots from everywhere. And anyway, those two guys won the.
Vince, I do have one.
It was great golf to watch. Fantastic.
Oh yeah,
golf.
No, you talk about attacking golf. It certainly was that. I do have one more just on golf, just to finish with. Watching the PMC father-son tournament.
The Tiger Woods, the Tiger Woods and his son tournament.
You've got to marvel, and even me as a seasoned golfer, right, seen a lot of things.
Yeah.
You got to look at Woods' son. He's got the Rory McIlroy finish, the swivel of the club, the whole box and dice. He's got it all. He's got all the mannerisms, like absolutely down pat.
Is this kid he's going to be, his destiny has got to be surely in the game of golf. He's going to be winning tournaments.
Look, Vince, I've seen players at 14-year-olds playing the US Open, and everyone said this is the next, whoever it was at the time. Yeah, Jack Nicklaus at the time. Ted Owe, I think I remember his name was. He played in the US Open 1991 or something, right?
Yeah.
And lots of pressure gets put on it. But I'm just saying from a just from an aesthetic point of view, looking at all the tricks and all the way they learn, and whether you want to use horse racing terms, Vince, bloodlines or breeding or stables or however you want to put it to,
He's
right?
got the best, hasn't he?
Oh, look, he's grown up with this, and he'd know, like Rory, he'd know all the tour guys. They'd be friends from when he was knee high to a grasshopper, and he just essentially just copies. This is amazing. This is why Vince, someone at our age picking up a golf club for the first time, has got no chance of being. I mean, you might be all right, but if you learn at such a young age and you just copy and you model, and then it's amazing how they do that. These kids are amazing. Just watching Stenson's son, watching Woods, all of them. Oh, look, that is a great tournament. That is one that, it's not about who wins, really. Who cares? It's about all of the families. And
Christmas time. Yeah.
But it's great.
A bit of fun.
It is really. You could watch that all day long. It is really good. Yeah.
Oh, well, we look forward to Tiger Woods' young son eventually becoming a pro golfer. No doubt he'll go in that direction. He's just too talented not to.
No pressure.
No pressure, though. No pressure.
No, not at all.
Should also mention the sad passing of a real trailblazer in golf, Lee Elder, passing away at the age of 87, a four-time tour winner. He was much admired in the world of golf, and unfortunately passed away. Maybe a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
All right. I tend to agree with you. The Phil Mickelson win at the USPGA was a big highlight for me as well. But I can't wait for the start of this new calendar year. There's going to be some fabulous tournaments in Hawaii to start off the year, and then eventually we head into the USA. I guess into mainland USA, and can't wait for some of those tournaments like the one at Torrey Pines and the next one at Pebble Beach in consecutive
on the West
weeks.
Coast.
I can't wait for the West Coast of the USA. It should be fantastic watching some of the best golfers in the world going around some of the best golf courses in the world.
Absolutely.
And, I don't know about you, but I just love Pebble Beach. It's just an incredible golf course.
Oh, it's Vince. It's even nicer in person if you ever get the chance to go. It is another world.
It is indeed. By the way, boys, I gather, Beachy, you haven't heard from Luke Humphries. He must have got. I know he had to go away today. He's up on the Murray there somewhere. Even though he was calling the Cranbourne Pacing Cup and Cranbourne Trotters Cup last night, did an absolutely sensational job. Big Group 2 race, the Cranbourne Pacing Cup, won by the pole marker, supreme dominator for trainer Joe Pace, and fabulous young driver. I happen to know this kid. He's only 21 years of age, and he has got a massive future in the sport. James Herbertson. Remember that name, James Herbertson?
Okay.
He is the next Chris Alford, Gavin Lang put together in the one package. Great young driver. Do you know at 21 years of age, how many winners he's already had this season? With only what have we got now? 12 days to go for the year. So he's got 12 days to get to this milestone, and I reckon he'll do it. He's on about 190 wins at the moment. On 190 wins for the season at 21 years of age.
Vince,
what a young driver he is. And
how many meetings a week would they drive?
Well, in Victoria, they're probably fortunate because every day there's at least one meeting. It's very, very rare on the calendar not to have a meeting in Victoria on any one day, other than things like Christmas Day and Good Friday and that sort of thing. But there might be a handful for the entire year. So they're probably fortunate that they can go from, Warragul or Cranbourne in the east of the state to, Terang and Horsham to the west and Mildura to the north or northwest, and as far up as Cobram and Echuca to the northeast, and everywhere in between, like Bendigo and Shepparton and Ballarat and Geelong and you name it, Maryborough. There's tracks everywhere. In fact, there's almost 50 tracks around Victoria. Now, not all of them get used regularly. A lot of them get their one or two meetings a year, but there is a good, probably a bit around 25 tracks that would be used quite regularly during the season. But yeah, young James Herbertson, amazing, 190 odd wins. Only about 25 wins off Chris Alford, who's on 215. Chris Alford's just a legend in the sport. He's driven over, I think he's over 7,000 winners now in his career. 7,000 winners. Have a think about how many that is. So what I was going to do, if Luke's not on, I'm going to give this a try, boys. It's one of the last things we do for the year. I'm going to play you the last couple of 100 metres of the Cranbourne Pacing Cup. Let's see if it comes out. Can you hear it? Hang on a sec.
Away. Supreme dominated the outside.
Can you hear that?
Yep. Down on the inside, perfect stride, Amazing Dream. Supreme Dominator throwing down the challenge. Amazing Dream, Supreme Dominator. Supreme Dominator looming up to Amazing Dream. Supreme Dominator. Supreme Dominator's grabbed Amazing Dream and won the Cranbourne Cup. Supreme Dominator and James Hermanson for Joe Pace. It's his night tonight. What a horse he is. He beats Amazing Dream a half head. Third is tight. Diving through the emergency, Rick Riley with Torrance Saint, perfect stride, our millionaire. And then Jillaby Bandit, copy that weekend. Bulletproof Boy, Better Be the Bomb. Copy that's run just about last year, the New Zealand Cup winner. And our millionaire was well back as well. 27.6 the final quarter. Mile rate 157.7. This progressive horse graduates to victory in the Cranbourne Cup Supreme Dominator.
There you go, fellas.
Incredible.
The Dominator.
That was young Luke Humphries at his best.
Is there a bit of Wayne Johnson omen there?
Well, I was just going to say a big hello and a big happy birthday to Wayne Johnston.
Oh, there you go.
Turned 62. So I don't know if he's watching. He probably isn't. But let's give him a big birthday shout out anyway. The great number 7 he is. Probably, let's be honest, probably the greatest finals player ever to play for Carlton. Certainly is. That's the opinion of David Parkin, and he saw him play enough games, that's for sure. But, Wayne Johnson, the Dominator at Carlton, happy birthday. And, yes, Supreme Dominator, that was the omen bet.
Was it number 7?
Victory to James Herbertson. What's that?
Was it number 7 as well or not?
No, it was number 1.
Oh, okay.
As I said, he was off the pole. And,
sorry,
and the
you did say
favourite,
that.
Copy that was the favourite at just on $2.20 or something like that. Pretty much came last. He won the New Zealand Trotting Cup over in Christchurch at Addington back in November, and was expected to win this. And had a pretty tough run, I'd say you'd probably have to say, outside the leader for most of the race, but certainly weakened unexpectedly. And as they came around the home turn, you just knew he was gone and dropped right out. So anyway, a big future for young James Herbertson, the driver of Supreme Dominator, winning a Group 2 Cranbourne Pacing Cup last night. And I should mention also that the Cranbourne Trotters Cup was the race before that, won by a horse called Have Horse Will Travel. For Kate Gath and her husband, Andy Gath, who was the trainer of the horse. Kate Gath's the driver. And took the lead soon after the start and was never headed. So fantastic win to them. Majestic Man, the horse that ran second in the Inter-Dominion Trotting Grand Final. He contested the race, was the only horse, in fact, from the Inter-Dominion to contest it. He went in favourite, only finished 4th. So I think those Inter-Dominions might have taken a bit out of some of those horses.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's it for the year for harness racing. There's some big races coming up in January, starting off with the Bendigo Pacing Cup on the 8th of January, the Cobram Pacing Cup on the 9th on the Sunday, which Luke will be calling. Then 3 days later, on the 12th, Luke will actually be turning 21. So we'll have to give him a big shout out for his 21st now in advance. So all the best for your 21st, Luke. And, of course, then the following week, we've got on the 15th of January, the Shepparton Pacing Cup. And the day after that, on the Sunday, the Hamilton Cup, followed by the following week on the Saturday night, Ballarat. That's a huge Group 1 race, over 100,000 in prize money at Ballarat on the 22nd. And then it starts the Summer of Glory at Melton, where there's a couple of, well, in fact, three big meetings coming up within the space of 8 days, and culminating with the Hunter Cup, the famous AG Hunter Cup on Saturday, the 5th of February. So it should be a big night there for the Hunter Cup, the $500,000 Hunter Cup. Well, boys, that's it for harness racing. And I think probably that should do us for 2021. I think we've pretty much wrapped up most of the other sports. We've talked golf. We have the Australian Open tennis, of course, coming up in January. Looking forward to that. It'd be interesting to see whether Novak Djokovic actually plays or not. Should be I think it's a welcome return back to a January time slot too, because I think last year they had to delay it by a couple of weeks, didn't they? Had to run it in February. Yes, they did. And, of course, Djokovic won the Australian Open last year. In fact, he almost won the Grand Slam last year. You know that? Yes. He won the Australian Open over Medvedev. Then he won the French Open against Tsitsipas. Then he won Wimbledon over a guy called Matteo Berrettini from Italy. And then he was up for the Grand Slam in September when he played the US Open against Medvedev again, but this time Medvedev beat him. So we unfortunately missed out on that. But in the women's, we had, of course, Naomi Osaka winning the Australian Open in February against Jennifer Brady. The French Open was won by Barbara Krejcikova, winning over Pavlyuchenkova. Gee, some of those Russian names really can test your pronunciation skills. Wimbledon, of course, that was my highlight in the tennis world, seeing Ash Barty winning against Carolina Pliskova. And then, of course, the US Open won by Emma Raducanu, defeating Leylah Fernandez in the US Open. So I think that's, from an Australian point of view, if you couldn't get excited about Ash Barty winning Wimbledon, you'd never get excited, would you?
No.
Great win. Right.
Huge.
So that's the tennis scene. We've talked cricket. We haven't bothered to go into the Big Bash League tonight, Beachy, but I think there'll be plenty of that still happening into the new year, so we'll give that a rest. But from an AFL perspective, we've certainly covered the Melbourne Premiership, and we've certainly talked a lot about Carlton and Carlton's prospects heading into 2022. Give me a prediction, boys. Where do you think Carlton's going to finish next year, based on what you've seen already with the trade and the draft, the national draft, etc.? Don't worry, I won't hold you to it. No, that's right. Let's just finish off the show with your predictions.
You'll just have to excuse us for thinking a bit carefully here, because a lot of people see different things, as I'm sure Steve and
of course.
You yourself, Vince, will attest to.
Of course.
Look, I think we want to see a rise up the ladder. I know you guys will want to agree with that. That said, I'm going to go with 10th. I'm not entirely sure if we will actually see a return to finals just yet. We will want to be seeing more games. We will want to be seeing more of games being won by us. That said, there are some tough opposition for us that we will have to face down the line. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with these first 9 rounds, specifically with the first 2 games in the Tigers and the Dogs.
Okay. So you think around 10th?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, would you call that a pass mark for Michael Voss in his first year? Getting us to go from 13th to 10th. And I gather from 13th to 10th means we go from what we won this year, 8 wins this year, to what, around about 10 or 11?
10 games.
To get to 10th,
Usually-
you'd have to win at least 11, I reckon.
It's normally a 50-50 for 10th, around 10th,
Yeah.
9th, around 50-50.
So you think around 11 wins, 11 losses, and 10th position on the ladder is a pass mark?
Yes, I would.
Okay. What about you, Steve? What's your prediction for Carlton in season 2022?
I'm thinking around 10th or 11th. I've got to give you one though, so I'm probably going to say 10th as well. To be completely honest, from a pass mark perspective, you're asking whether I think it's a pass, or whether you think the club thinks it's a pass? I want to just define your
Whether
question a
you
little
think
bit
it's
more.
a pass.
Okay, so I think that would be a pass, but I'm not completely overly worried about ladder position. It's more the points I raised earlier about, not about winning how many games you win. It's more, defensively, did we address how easy we were to score against?
Yeah.
Did we have other options for Harry Mackay, et cetera, et cetera? That's more for me. I'd rather win less games and solve some of those problems consistently rather than have one great game and then have lots of those issues not addressed at all, which would give me, I'm not saying you need to be perfectly consistent, because of course you're not. If you're going to be 10th or 11th, you're not going to be consistent, and otherwise you'd be top 4. But if we're not going to address those issues, or at least seem that we're on the way to addressing them, I can't see how we can progress better than that. So it's not about ladder position, but I will say 10th as well.
Okay. Well,
and yours, Vince?
I think we've got a very kind draw. And that leads me to think that we will probably win around 11 to 12 games. I'm going to stick out my neck here and say that we'll win 12. I think there's a lot of those 50-50 games that we were losing under David Teague that I think we should be able to turn around to some extent. And I think just we need to get a lot more out of our existing players. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to seeing next year, that we're going to have, rather than just saying, these new players coming on are going to make all the difference, I actually think it's the improvement in our existing list that we need to see take us up the ladder, and that the George Hewitts and Adam Cherries are cherries on the top rather than the cake itself. So I'm actually going to predict that we'll win 12 games and we will either just make it or just fail, depending on percentage. So,
but
I'll
Vince,
make a prediction and say that we will pass. We will actually make 8th position on 12 wins next year. I think the draw is just too generous to us. I just can't see how you wouldn't win 12 games based on what our list should be able to produce.
But Vince, if you look at the 8 this year, so and this is where this whole what number you think will finish is somewhat of a challenging question to answer, because it's really probably more how many wins you think we'll have, right? So that's probably more, because this year there was quite a gap between 8th and 7th position. 6th and 8th and 7th position. And to make the 8, you didn't have to win anywhere near as many games as you had in previous years.
Yeah.
So I don't know if 12 wins will get you into the 8 this year. It may, but it will depend on the log jam at the top, or what those bottom 8 teams do or don't win in games. Previously, it's always been 13 wins to get you into the 8.
What I also one of the other reasons I think we'll win 12 games and improve 50% on what we did this year is because we always have a bit of a sugar hit year in the first year of a new coach, and this happens in nearly every coach we've had. with the exception of Dennis Pagan in the last 20 years. So when Ratton came along, his first year, he got us up from bottom of the ladder to, I think, 11th. Okay? That was in 2008. And then 2009, we actually made the 8 and played an elimination final. So that's not a bad rise, isn't it? When you finished, effectively, I think we finished second last in 2007 to then go 11th in 2008 and then 8th in 2009. And I think we finished 8th again in 2010. And then I think we rose up the ladder to like 6th or even 5th, I think it was. I think we ended up being 5th playing Essendon, 8th in the elimination final of 2011. Yep. So
yes, that was
a steady rise under Ratton. And then even when they sacked him in 2012 and brought in Malthouse had a fairly good first year. Again, he won 11 games and 11 losses and fortunate enough to make the finals thanks to Essendon being disqualified. But that was his best year. Then he got sacked. Then they brought in Bolton. His first year was a sugar hit compared to where we finished the year before, because we finished last in 2015, if you remember. They sacked Malthouse. They had John Barker there for 14 games. He only managed to get 3 victories out of those 14 games. We finished last. But under Bolton, he came along, and I think we won 6 or 7 games in the first year. Even when Bolton was sacked halfway through 2019, after coming off a 2-win season the year before in 2018, where we finished on the bottom, again, T comes in, sugar hit, wins 6 out of the next 11 games, I think it was. So we've always tended to have this sugar hit in the first year of a new coach. Now, what will be interesting is if we do that, can we keep the improvement going like we did under Ratton, or is it going to go back in the other direction like it did with Malthouse, like it did with Bolton, and like it did with Teague?
Well,
that's going to be a big test. Not 2022, but 2023 and 24. That's going to be the big test for Michael Voss.
But Vince, that's about, without going too much detail, that's about not just the coach, but about all the assistants in the team and everything behind them.
Of course, yeah. But all I'm pointing out is that, you know, having that first year of having that bit of a rise up the ladder, a sugar hit, as I referred to it, that's one thing. What that also does is create expectations, because then people expect you to improve again the following year.
Yeah.
And make finals and make top 4 and all this sort of business. That's going to be the big test for Michael Voss. I think, like any new coach, he's going to be given his little honeymoon period. Now, unless he has an absolute disaster next year, he's going to be given a year to get used to it all. It's the second and third years which will determine whether he continues coaching us or whether we're back to the same old churn them in, churn them out cycle. Get in another Messiah. It might happen in 3 years from now. Who knows? Anyway, gents,
let's hope not.
That's my prediction. I think we'll actually make the 8 next year. There you go. On the strength of our very soft fixture and what I think will be natural improvement in a lot of the existing players on the list who can't turn to, you know, having a coach blamed. They've got to really perform themselves now.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I think we've covered the world of sport very comprehensively tonight. Thank you very much for joining us, Steve, and giving us your thoughts on all these sports as well as Carlton. Beachy, in the control room as usual in the Bat Cave. You're a legend, mate. Thank you so much for your help. Have yourselves a great Christmas and New Year, and let's hope that we all come back bigger and better and brighter for a brand new future in 2022. And let's hope that Carlton can rise up the ladder, and we'll certainly cover the Carlton Football Club in a lot more detail in future episodes. But this is effectively the end of our summer series. Thanks everyone who's watched and supported the show. Big hello to Joe Lutzer up there in Bangkok in Thailand. I'm not sure if he's watching or not, but he was going to come on, but then he had some technical difficulties. Thanks to Gosmar Getter for coming on and giving us his thoughts. And to all of our viewers, thank you very much for your support. Okay, guys, I think that'll be it for now. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Go Blues.
Go Blues.
God bless.
Cheers.